they told me to sit here. Okay. Yeah. So, good morning and welcome to our panel. First, I was asked to ask everybody to switch the phones off because there will be a recording and a live translation. So, thank you. Yes, so good morning again and welcome to the panel on NFT art trends. Today we are going to talk about generative art, which is one of the strongest trends in NFT art space. This art created with code, and this art form was around since 1960s, and it has flourished in the last 20 years driven by open source movement and new software tools like processing. But in the last year or so, it has really taken off. We had observed an explosion of interest in this art form, mainly driven by Web3 technology. And today I have the privilege to host an amazing panel which covers the whole ecosystem of the contemporary generative art. We have two artists, highly successful artists, Iskra Velitchkova and Eco33. We have founder of the gallery, which is equally present in physical exhibition space, Lorenzo Cortesi and Cortesi Verso Gallery. And you are also present in the digital space and NFT space. And I welcome Paul Schmidt, who is representing FXHash, an NFT platform for generative art. My name is Anna Wolf, and I'm working at the intersection of art, economic research, and blockchain technology. And I've fallen in love with generative art, I think like everybody else in this panel. And I have also become a collector. So, Iskra, what is generative art to you? I think before you decided to become professional full-time generative artist, you were working on data visualization, on the intersection of art and technology. And what was your first encounter with generative art?
Hi, thank you for introduction. Let's say I started my career in data visualization, which is basically, it was like years ago when we had this kind of hype of data and we needed to process the data and visualize it like somehow to make it accessible to people. And then the years just passed, and then I kind of realized that what was actually important in the work of trying to say these stories were the algorithms and not so much the data, which is like changing all the time and it's not so relevant. And I got like so much into the algorithms and this kind of dialogue between us as humans and the machines. And that brought me to very big questions, let's say, which I wasn't able to find an answer in the corporation. Because I wasn't moved by results or money or whatever, so I just quit the job and spent like 1.5 years trying to gather all the knowledges and everything. And I said, okay, like maybe generative art is a great tool to get into this with the freedom of art, just trying to find answers and so on. And then the NFTs came, so we'll talk about this later, I guess. But beyond what's the technology, it's like a moment that allows us to experiment a lot with some kind of safe space of after experimentation, right? So generative art for me, it's the same as data visualization, but without the constraints of building something that has to be accurate to something, but just accurate to the beauty itself. And I would say it's so difficult to explain, I guess, because it's a beginning of a dialogue with a machine. And we are not sure about the words we have to use and how we can express with the machine and how can we understand the feedback of the machine. Because in short, it's like building a system, an algorithm, and see what happens. And it's not that the machine is working by itself, but you're guiding, and then many people in the space we are talking about, if it's about randomness if the process is something that we can control or not. There is 3 grades of randomness which you cannot control, but the most powerful thing is that you are able to achieve some unachievable results by the human. I mean, when you use this kind of, you mentioned that started like in the 60s, and that's right. And why now? It's like this hype. I think it's because it's like gathering all these new technological capacities to generate like a huge amount of graphic information, which it's impossible to do by the human. So it's like this kind of collaboration, and that's for me generative art. This dialogue.
I think in an interview you said that generative art helps us to better understand ourselves, and I think this resonates very much with me. Because with generative art you can create such a variety of expression, which
it's because of this randomness of the process and this unexpected result. I think we are all the time trying to, and that's fine, giving this humanity to the machines because we have to have this dialogue. But I mean, if you're working with this augmented capacity of worlds, it's all about reaching and answering very old and big questions like who we are, and everything is information. So if you are reaching this spectrum of, if you talk about data, this is my background, I know how big data says a lot about you, but maybe not the right things that we want to know. Companies have our data and they know about where we're going, and that's fine, but it's not so interesting in terms of evolution. But if you are able to build some system that uses this technology of finding new dimensions, new spaces in your mind, new behaviors, and you can try to put all this in the service of art, which is so free, it's like, it's clear to me that we'll find some answer in the process. So maybe we can understand better ourselves, which is becoming more human maybe, I don't know. But everything is so open now to discuss, and I think it's very beautiful.
Yeah, it is a fascinating field. Zhang, you have been into generative art since more than 2 decades. And I know on Twitter you are writing a lot about generative art history. What is your view on generative art, on this take-off that happened during the last year or so? Would it have happened anyway, or is it somehow connected to the technologies, to the Web3 technology which we have now?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of many aspects where we all stand on the shoulders of giants, and we had huge body of work which we rediscovered today, and which is also presented for some of them at Art Basel. So there is people and also the machines and the technology with the blockchain and the Tezos ecosystem as well. So I think it's a good timing, and it's very enthusiastic to see that today we have ways to also archive the work we create, because we can also see today that pieces created in the 50s or the 60s can be hard to display. So usually you have to refactor the code, and the archiving side of things can be tricky. However, now using open source technologies and Tezos, we have the opportunity to create in the blockchain itself and have the code in there using open source software. So we can imagine that maybe, I don't know, 50 years, 100 years from now, we will be able to recreate and re-enjoy the art. So yeah, it's a combination of factors. And also the interaction with the collector, I think, is super important, because you really have a specific dynamic with the collectors when you display the overall look and feel, but also when you collect on the primary market your generative art, the action the button you press is going to generate this like large number, and this number is going to be inputted within your algorithm, and you never know what your collector is actually going to get. So it's technology which is moving very fast, and yeah, a body of work that we rediscovered today, and which is very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So before the NFTs, you were mainly exhibiting your art. Did this Web3 technology change somehow your artistic praxis, or how you create art? Is it different, or it's actually the same?
Well, I think it is, because we have new hardware capacities today. So things we are working on today were definitely not possible like 20 years ago, for sure. Mm-hmm. So we have to take care about the web standards and also the mobile experience, because we have a lot of collectors who also enjoy looking at what they collect on their phone. So it's yeah, always moving. So we also revisit sometimes the classics, of course, because they're also great. And also we try, well, at least I do, to kind of connecting the bridge between the classic art world and the modern generative art pieces. And there's so many interesting things to do in the future with like are we working on pieces which are metaverse ready? I think we should somehow. So that's moving maybe from 2D to 3 dimension, pre-rendered to real time. There's many aspects and so many things to discover in the near term.
Yeah, I think like art and technology have been always influencing each other, and in generative art we observe this influence even faster and much stronger than in other art forms. Yeah, Lorenzo, yeah, you are founder of a gallery which is equally present in physical exhibition space and in digital exhibition space, and I think that like museums and galleries have been rather reluctant to exhibit generative art so far. What influenced your decision to allocate resources like time and space to this art form?
Well, mostly I'm passionate about blockchain technology and cryptos from a long time as just a passion, not a work. And I have a modern and post-war gallery, so it's very far away from NFTs. But when I started to study generative art, I saw that it has very strong roots on traditional art world, in traditional art. So I decided to try to find a way to exhibit generative art together with the post-war artists. And to do that, we decided to build a Web3 platform to don't exclude the crypto collectors or the collectors that supported the artists in the last years. And so we decided to try to make a bridge between the two worlds. And in generative art, I see really the best way, the perfect way to make this bridge, because it's very effective to propose something to the traditional art world that is very similar to what they usually see in art fairs, because the mostly famous generative art is 2D images. And in Art Basel, like 99% of the artworks hanging on the wall are 2D images. So it's very easy to print them in whatever medium the artists prefer. And it's easy also to propose to traditional collectors. And that's the main reason we decided to allocate a lot of resources of the gallery to generative art. And right now we are organizing different exhibitions in the gallery and art fairs. And yeah, mostly that's it. I see generative art as a perfect bridge between the two worlds.
Yeah, I also think so, yeah. And do you approach like, exhibitions of generative art differently than other art forms, or it's just the same?
Mostly it's the same, because I just want to redefine. We have to redefine a bit the space with television and digital screen, but it's really the same. We have just to think about also the only digital part that is the new part for me, because we are confident on our job in the physical world, but for the digital part is everything is new. So the Web3 platform that is called Civerso.io it was totally new with the smart contract and all the technological stuff that is new, because we wanted to propose it also to digital collectors. And as Eko was saying, many people collecting on mobile phones, so it's a new experience. There are just new collectors that normally don't come to our art fairs or to our galleries. And it amazes me how many new collectors Tezos brought in the art world, because before I have so many friends that never collected art, really never, while with generative art and Tezos, they became art collectors. And I think that's awesome. The NFTs are bringing many new collectors and artists to the fine art world that before it was just more elitist thing. Like the masses were already enjoying art in museums and galleries, but they were not collectors. While with FXH and Tezos, they became collectors finally. And that's, for me, is the big opportunity for the art world.
Mm-hmm. Maybe Iskra and Eko, you were exhibiting before. You have become successful in NFT space. So now you are actually not dependent on exhibiting anymore. But how important, or is it still important for you, or do you regard these physical exhibitions still an important part of culture?
I think it's super important.
Yeah.
It would be a mistake to neglect the traditional art world. And it's also, for me, I enjoy so much meeting other artists and galleries, but also interacting with the collectors. It's important to understand how do they approach this, because for most of them, we have a lot of jargon going on. We use words that we use these words every day on Twitter or everywhere, but you realize that in the real world, we have to explain, we have to simplify, and we have to help fostering the adoption of decentralized technologies, and Tezos is a fantastic example about it. But at the end of the day, people are mostly concerned about the art. What do they enjoy? How do they make sure that the provenance is right? There is a full transparency regarding the pricing and the sales and everything. So the art world event like Art Basel and having this panel, for example, it's super important, and I don't think we should cut a line and say, no way. So yeah, we're grateful to be here today, and it's great.
Yeah, I think it's not independent from, the work is creating digitally because it's on its nature, and that's why it's so easy to exhibit it online.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to take a picture or try to transpose it to something digital, because it's digital. But then, for sure, it's suitable to be exhibited in a physical way. I think now we are kind of struggling, trying to find a way to exhibit that, because it's not the same exhibiting a screen. You have to take care of the light, in a different way, and how you can place the works in. Now maybe there is not so much sense of putting like 3 artworks, because they can change a lot. So now a lot of questions are just open of how to exhibit that work. But I think, of course, it's something that needs to be physical to experiment, like as a humans, So it's not independent. So I think it's super necessary.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of work to do for galleries to develop new forms of physical exhibition of digital art, and particularly generative art.
Yeah, we have to, as I was saying before, redefining the space, because with digital screen is totally different. Also, as Iskra was saying, the lighting, that was kind of easy, very important thing, but easy on physical artworks, while on digital screen everything is changing. But at the end, we have to try to put the art in the best way possible in the gallery, in the art fair. So yeah, we are working on it, and of course, I think also the tech industry is working really hard to bring new devices to show NFTs that probably will take also the asset from the blockchain, and you don't have to go with an USB on the TV screen. So we will see also what happens in the future in the tech industry.
Yeah. Paul, you are representing FXH, an NFT platform for generative art, and this NFT platform has an exhibition space here in Art Basel. You had an exhibition space in Basel, Hong Kong, Art Basel, Hong Kong, and I know you had a few exhibitions in Berlin, and you go to have one in autumn in Berlin. So what is FX Hash? What makes it unique in the NFT space? Yeah.
So yeah, FX Hash, first of all, is a platform for generative art built on Tezos. And what we try to do is really be an open space for both the artists as well as the collectors to provide them all of the tools that they may need, and provide that. And doing that without having a say in it. So there's no curation involved. We just provide the tools, and the collectors can collect what they want and basically dictate what is well-liked or not well-liked. But this also gives the artist the freedom to branch out and try out some new things. And this is really like our sort of like ethos that we are trying to build. And what is interesting, what you also said, this sort of like ethos of trying something new out, I think this can also be seen here or also in Hong Kong with our installation or like exhibition that we have. So it is not only that you see like the artworks by amazing artists, but you can also experience it live through like a live minting experience. So instead of just going to a gallery or just going to a museum and admiring the artworks, you can now actively take part in it. And through this generative process actually through, if you mint it, then a few moments later, your artwork will be shown directly live on the screens. And I think this is sort of like the beauty of what we can do and how we can also adapt and change the way we consume art and consume anything digital, but especially anything digital art related.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I'm a huge fan of FX Hash and also a community member, and I think it is a unique experimentation field for artists and collectors, and there are no barriers, but we also see like a huge amount of art released, and also a new trend in generative art, which is this long-form generative art, when artists release whole collections, like of 100, 400, 500 editions. Is there any way for collectors to handle it? I know that there will be some solutions, some technical solutions like community curation. Can you already say something about it, or no, not yet? Yeah.
So I think so long-form generative art, I think, is an amazing thing to do because it, again, like changes the way things have been done previously. I know for the artist, it's also a struggle because you have to think about much more. You can't control, basically. You can't control the outputs. You write your code, you write your algorithm, as Iskra said, and then basically you mint it, and then it's live, and you can't interfere with it anymore. So with that, of course, there comes a lot of, not problems, but interesting challenges, let's maybe call it like that, where also the collectors don't know what they will get. But I think that sort of also is the beauty of it, and with the amount of iterations that then will get created, there is sort of like becoming a need for curation. And initially, or like when I came into the NFT space, a lot of people were like really heavily against curation because that is something that is like traditionally also happening in the old art world or like in the traditional art world. But I think this is really like the start where we see sort of like that we need not only opinion makers, but also more education, because this approach of Tezos and the Tezos community is a really bottom-up approach. And if you go with a bottom-up approach, then you need to educate people or need to give the people the possibility to educate and to learn more about the art and to see how this how these algorithms and how they compare also to traditional art. So I think with it there will come community curation. We are currently also building this. We first focused on basically providing the tools for the artists, and now we really want to provide the tools for the collectors as well to educate themselves, to also explain and show what they feel and how they connect to specific artworks. So yeah, this is coming sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so this long-form generative art, Eco 33, it is a new trend within generative art. And you have been around since like 20 years, so you have observed and actively taken part in the evolution of generative art. So what is your view on this long-form collections? What is your relationship to it? Yeah.
Sure, and long form also to explain maybe to everyone very quickly is we saw the evolution from unique pieces, like the work from Vera Molnar, for example, or François Morlaix, where you had like one piece, it was unique, it was a unique edition. Today, we have the capacity, thanks to the new technology, that we can define the code and the system which is producing the artwork, but also we give spaces for specific parameters that can change when you create your artwork. So, and when you have an edition, which is usually around 1,000 units editions, we can call it long-form generative art. So that was for the quick intro. And to me, it's super fascinating because I work especially also on the relation between luck and the life decisions we make. Because for me, luck is usually provoked. This is kind of my mindset. And when you create a generative artwork as a long form, there is some randomness involved because you have specific numbers when you create the artwork. You can also generate randomness, but also you have to control it if you want to. So it's a very interesting and liberating experience from a creative standpoint, because you build a system and you have to make sure that you have some consistency across your collection, but also some variety as well, because you don't want people to get all the same thing. So you have to find this right balance between randomness, your artistic expectations, and I personally spend much more time on this aspect of my work. Because it's one step to get the overall look and feel, but then you need to explore this space of parameters. And this is really fascinating. And the sky is the limit, literally. You have no limitations.
Yeah, I think like with this long-form collections, artists can create almost unlimited number of unique versions of one artwork, and releasing a collection of 500 pieces already forms a collector community around it, who can create culture around an artwork. But Lorenzo, there is also, I know in traditional art world, people are worried or about rarity of an artwork, and this huge collections, they are the opposite. So what's the view?
I see the long-form collection more as an edition. I know the beauty of the long-form is an edition, but every piece is unique. So it's like an edition on boost, because everyone got a different piece, is unique, but is a part of a series, maybe of 1,000 or 500, etc. And I think also the randomness that Heiko was speaking about is a beautiful thing, because it's giving maybe some of those unique pieces will be rarer and some will be more common. And the big difference here from the traditional art world, of course, that normally unique high-number editions are much cheaper than unique pieces, but it's not only long form in generative art. Many artists are doing curated series, so maybe they are doing the algorithm, the script alone in their house. They are perfecting the algorithm, and they are finding only 3 or 4 pieces that will be the small curated series. And with the gallery, we want to try to bring both to the traditional art world. For example, in Bologna, in the last art fair we did with generative art, we had around 8 physical printed NFTs of generative art that were a small curated series, and so unique pieces in a small series, but there was also a digital screen with a long form of a series of 200 where people could mint and generate in the physical space. So I think they can really live together, and it's not a really new thing for traditional art, because we already had editions. So it's just a better way to propose edition, because every piece is unique, and collectors are much happier to have a unique piece of a series instead of 900 of the same piece.
Okay, so like both forms, unique one-to-one pieces or small editions with like 3, 4, 5 pieces are equally interesting as releasing 100 edition for you in an exhibition.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the long form edition will be much cheaper and can appeal to every collector. As I was saying, many of my friends never collected something of the gallery, but as soon as I made a drop of long form generative art, they started to collect them because it was 35 Tezos, that is 70 euros, maybe a bit less right now, but around 70 euros, while the small curated series was around 8,000 euros. That is very normal for a contemporary artist. So I think, yes, they can live together, and we have to find the best way to exhibit them in a physical space, but we already see here in the Tezos space that is very achievable.
Yeah.
May I ask just a question to the audience? Please raise your hand if you have an NFT, if you own an NFT.
Okay. Oh.
Okay, that's a very prepared audience.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
we have an audience of experts already. Yeah, and Iskra, I know you release collections, but you are also in favor for one-to-one pieces. Yeah. So how these two directions interact?
It depends on the project. Sometimes it feels like I want to work a lot on one piece and make it just special because it's like a part of a story, and I want to create a narrative around a concrete piece. But it's just another process. When I think about a long form project, it's just a different mindset. So you're using different skills to do that. You have to think about as Eco mentioned before, building a consistent system, but also make it variable. And when you're building a unique piece, you're just focusing, only focusing on one thing. But yeah, I think long form, it's a beautiful provocation today because it's about, you have to limit the edition, and you have to say, okay, that will be 1,000, or it can be 2 editions. But it feels like I built all these things just for 2 editions, but it will be completely fine. But being able to cover all this room by one artist in 1 minute, it's something that it's completely new. So many questions arise now, like what's the artwork? And if you have 1,000 or 5, it will be cheaper, 1,000, or maybe not, I don't know, but maybe the system is the work itself, and it's like everyone has a piece of the system, but I'm not sure what's the artwork now, because we don't have a consensus of what it is, but, yeah, just to mention that there is a difference in the process, and actually a large edition, it's something that is still to be defined of what's the art inside, and if it's everything or not. And in terms of exhibiting here, for instance, in our Basel, 20 artists can fill all the space, but that's not something that we really want to. But where is the limit? Where we should limit the editions? So that's something that we have to talk about, and it's so interesting, I think.
Yeah, I think you also once said that all this NFT and generative art, it's a movement, and we need to take care of it. And I think there are still like many questions and surrounding it, and how we can all together shape this culture.
I think it is, but in terms of beyond NFTs itself, I understand NFTs like a channel to do that. Blockchain is a system that you can do transactions there. You can buy a house with that, and you can put an artwork. So it's not that generative art cannot live without NFTs. That's not true. It's like a channel that I think empowers each one. But I mean, it's a movement because, or it will be clearly for me, because now today we're living about this relationship between humans and machine, and that's for sure. Everything is machines now. So the art should be part of this new way of interacting between us. So that would be a movement, and we are here and in a very new way interacting with each other in the communities. And I think now the platforms and the galleries are defining our own practice. And it's not like, yeah, I do that and I try to find a gallery to exhibit. The platforms, one day you say, now you can mint 1,000 works. So the artist would say, okay, so now I can do 1,000. So now my artwork is 1,000. So you're shaping our way to do things. So it's clearly now a moment that we are defining, and the future will be part of that. So, yeah, I'm kind of a romantic person, so I really think it's a movement, but I'm not sure. But something is happening. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's the 3D technology allows us to allows that everybody is shaping the culture around art, and everybody can participate in this culture. And in generative art, in particular, I think. So I think we have a few minutes. Maybe there are some questions from the audience. Yeah, please. I think you get a microphone. Yeah.
Meanwhile, can I just add one thing to the movement? I think like NFTs is a real cultural movement more than an artistic one, but generative art is probably in my opinion, the most important artistic movement of the decade, because it has really strong roots in the past, but it's totally new, and with the blockchain technology really skyrocketed to new level, and there are so many artists joining the space, creating new artworks that before probably were not artists. Like, we're artists, but only as an hobby. I met so many generative artists that were doing just as a pleasure, and didn't know they could be artists for like as a full-time job, a full-time career, where right now there are so many people entering this space, knowing that there is a market and there is a public. So it's really
it's incredibly like it's global and open and inclusive and diverse. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Sorry for stealing your time.
Hi, I'm Santi. Thank you so much for this panel. I'm a big fan of generative art and artist myself. And I wanted to ask you, you know, they say you discover some things about yourself through your art. So I wanted to ask the artists here, you were talking about this dialogue with a computer, with a machine as you're creating. What have you discovered about yourself as you are creating your generative art?
That's the easiest question. Well, I have some questions as me. Like, I want to discover things about myself, and I'm a person who was born in one place, and then I grew up in another one. So I had these kind of identity questions, which are not so big in my daily life, but they're somewhere inside. And I've been working for many years on trying to find a way to, through technology, find my place, like a linear place where I'm closer to which country. That's a big question for me. Doing it by like deep learning techniques and machine learning. But that's something quite difficult to do because I'm so biased with my own input that I will put in the system. So with generative art, which is not constrained by any data, it's just like feeling free with your algorithm, I decided to just put apart this not easy question and go ahead with the most big abstraction that I can have in this dialogue. So when I create things, I'm not a coder, I'm not a formal coder, or I'm not an organized person, let's say. So when I code, actually my process is about creating an algorithm and then break it like in many pieces and destroy it. And something appears there. And when you play in that game, at some point you have something very organic, and you find, a little bird, in my case, or a leaf, or the sea. But you are not meant to create that. It came from the destruction. So then you say, okay, so I created a leaf. Maybe I can go back in my code and see how this leaf it's built. And that's incredible, trying to understand how nature is done So, of course, I didn't understood anything now, but I'm in this process. So this is part of, if we can find reasons of why things are like that, we can go to the ultimate question, which is why we are like we are. And what's after that, maybe, if we discover how this is all made, we can step one step further and say, okay, what's beyond that? So yeah, it's a very abstract way of thinking, but I really believe in that. And generative art with this huge capacity of going behind our own capacity, it's bringing this answer. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, what I learned about myself creating this work is trying to be as patient as possible. That's not always the easiest thing to do, but that's, well, at least for me, super important, because it can take months, like literally, of hard work coding every day. Sometimes you're not going anywhere. Sometimes you have like things where you're like, wow, I was not expecting this. So it's like taming the machine a little bit, taming yourself, taking your time to provide the best you can deliver. And also, it gives you emotions. And it's kind of unexpected from a machine, which is like your screen, or sometimes you can work on paper just to make a draft. And at some point, you feel an emotion, like, wow, you like, and you start taking screenshots of what you do because you don't want to lose the state you enjoy. And then the more you advance, and sometimes you go backward because like, oh, I completely lost myself. Or sometimes you engage more and more with the machine, and this communication, like for me, it's a very important trigger when I'm like, okay, I'm kind of happy with where I want to go. So yeah, patience, and also being open to like sometimes unexpectedness. And for a coder, where I see myself, I enjoy designing autonomous systems. It's also a way to let go to randomness, because you can't control everything in your life either. So yeah, it's finding the right balance between your intent and taking the outside randomness which is occurring in our daily lives. So yeah, it's an ongoing process.
So, okay, if there are no further questions, then, one question in the back is, yeah.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Peter, and I have a question on what you currently think about the NFT market being talked down upon by especially prominent figures such as Bill Gates. How you said NFTs are shams based on greater fool theory. I just want to know what you think about that.
Can I say something?
Yeah, I want to as well.
We don't agree.
Maybe there is a bit of everything in NFT's world. Maybe there are some scams, a greater full Ponzi scheme or whatever. It's just like any digital asset can be an NFTs, and there are really a lot of scams. It's a new technology. It's really a wild, like it's a far west technology, because it's very hard to protect yourself if you're not little bit experienced in this sector. But for us, we are just bringing art NFTs. That's not a greater full theory or anything like that. It's just contemporary art. So it really doesn't matter what Bill Gates says. I agree with him that there are so many scams, but it's not concerned like the artistic process and the artistic exhibitions.
Yeah, I agree with like what Lorenzo said, like wholeheartedly. I think, I mean, I wasn't around 20 years ago, but I think it is pretty similar to what happened when the internet first came out. There is a big rush trying to get in, trying to sort of like make money or like earn money, and also this rush is like done by a lot of players with bad intentions. But I think these things will only play out in the next 1 to 2 to 3 years, and especially right now in this market environment, we are seeing that these projects are not performing. Like, they have no volume, they have no users anymore, because it's just artificially propped up. And I think this really will benefit sort of like the true players and the true builders in the in this space over the long run. So yes, while what you said, while Bill Gates might think superficially NFTs are a scam, not everything is. I think probably 10, 20, 30% will stay, but these platforms like on Tezos, I think they are here to stay because it's, again, like democratizing everything from the bottom up and not something superficially pushed down on people from the top down. So yeah, I think it is, I agree with it, but I don't agree with his conclusion that he takes.
Do we have time for one more question? And then I think it would be the last. I think was first, yeah. Here, in the first row. Yeah.
It's right, like there's a lot of
Hi, I'm Lalo, and I wanted to ask, how do you see, because we have like the classical artists who are still creating and sort of minting NFTs, taking pictures of their work or whatever, but how do you see moving forward the classical art and these new generative art sort of merge? So in a sense, like a watercolorist would learn how to code watercolor and then create a collection, a generative collection of watercolors. Do you see this into the future, or do you think classical art will remain that way, and then it's going to be like a new generation of artists who will learn how to code and how to create from now?
Is it for me? Okay. I think like this kind of generative art, the artists are using a new tool that before was not used or was not really famous to creating art. So I suppose in the future, generative art could be also watercolor or all on canvas in some way. Also in the past, like Eko was mentioning, Morellet was not using any code to create his art, but it was generative art. So I think it will evolve in a different way for sure. But right now, the generative art made with code is I think the main focus of many people, because it's perfect and it involves the blockchain, the NFTs, and is also creating beautiful art in a very new, innovative way.
Yeah, so thank you so much. I think we have seen that generative art is an emerging, open, exciting, and fascinating field. So I thank you very much for being here, and thank you for listening and for asking questions. And the artist will be around, so we can continue the discussion afterward. Thank you.
And if you want to, you can maybe mint some echo pieces at the Tezos booth right around the corner.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Thank
you, everyone. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anna.
Bye-bye.